All right, guys, I'm excited to have another little mini episode here today. I've got my friend Rich up in Virginia, right, Rich? I,
Yeah,
I, I
yeah,
know a lot of people travel to that event. I just want to make sure. But you're in Virginia, right?
yes, I am. Yep,
Yeah.
been
Let's
here
introduce.
most of my
Go
life.
ahead and introduce yourself for folks, right?
Yeah, sure. My name is Rich Lennon, and I work out of the Richmond market. Been a real estate investor and now a lender for time about 14, 15 years now, which just kind of makes me old.
Look, it's all good. I know that you and we were enjoying some conversation, right? Before we hit record, and so I'm looking forward to diving into this. So the people want to know, what's been your take on this with debt or no debt on rentals? What was your goal with your rentals as far as using debt, and then has that ever changed over the years? What do you think?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. And so I appreciate you going around and asking everybody this. I think this is great. And everybody has a different answer, which makes it even better. But I started off my goal and it was written down. I always write your goals down. It was 100 properties free and clear. So before I got into the business, like that was my thought about what freedom was. So when you're building that business, you absolutely have to leverage. Like you have to, the number one way I created wealth was through Burr. I did a couple hundred Burrs when I buy it, refinance it, had the money sitting in there. And that is absolutely a huge contributor to my overall wealth. So as I gained on the wealth curve, as I grew, right, my opinion on whether or not I should be leveraged or not has certainly changed over time.
What do you think? So as you got going, debt played a role. But then so now that as you're reaching some of your goals, whether it's still the 100 that you originally had, or if those goals have changed, now that you've, seen the results and things like that, where do you stand now on it?
So my rental portfolio is leveraged still. The majority is leveraged. And so I leverage around 50%. I was a product of that post like crash where never trust the banks. They're always going to call your notes philosophy. So I've really kind of used that to guide myself and to be fairly low leveraged.
Yeah.
But as I've kind of gone on that wealth curve, I've discovered the importance of having a couple free and clears. And having those free and clears is like a piggy bank when you're doing a business or you have an opportunity. By having a couple of free and clears, you can just slap a note and deed of trust on it. You can go to your friend, hey, give me whatever. I need 100 grand on this $300,000 house. Like you can get funded like that week kind of thing.
I'm literally doing that right now. Just spoke to my private lender earlier today. I right now it's not so easy to sell. And so, but I have all this debt equity and I wanted to recoup. We just did one turn on a rental and we're about to do a second. And we're using all of our operating cash, not all of it, but we're using a lot of our operating. We want to replenish that operating cash. So what are we doing? We're giving a friend a great low loan to value note on one of our free and clear rentals, right? And it's safe for them, safe for us, and we're able to access some of that equity.
Yeah, absolutely. And having friends like that is great, but almost anybody will lend on a free and clear house. It is a difference of saying like, hey, will you be in second position on my portfolio, even if your portfolio is worth $5 million, right? It's that not you don't be all tied together. And
Sure.
another one is I think that the primary home. I think that as you build wealth, you begin to think about your primary.
Yeah.
And I think at least for me on my path, when I reached a certain level of wealth, I was afraid to lose it. And so for security reasons, I paid off my mortgage on my primary. And I was like, okay, like if because I'm an entrepreneur, I'm waiting for everything to go wrong all the time. And I was like, well, hey, if ever something goes wrong, I still have my home free and clear, which is like a really big deal. And so I got some wealth. And then, like, at that point, I paid off the mortgage. But as I grew my wealth again, I changed my mind yet again, where I was like, okay, that's a little bit of a scarcity mindset um, of not using that money. Because if you have $500,000 or $1 million in your primary, that money isn't growing. And so your wealth growth really slows down because you can deploy that 500,000 or $1 million. And it like really helps your growth curve. And so like once I reach another level, like I put the debt back on the house because I like, okay, now I can, it's really a chessboard and I'm confident that I can move pieces around. And to really get the next level of wealth, I have to move as much of my money as possible at the highest yield I can get. And for me, that was the name of the game.
And I like how you say that, Rich, because I think really the deals you do are a direct reflection of your skill set, right? And so in playing chess, you can only play, do certain moves. Okay, I just got done playing pickleball, so I've never really played a lot of chess. So let's kind of pull from the chess and talk pickleball. I can only do certain things, in that game when I have a higher level of skill, right? And so the same thing with debt is understanding that there should kind of be a correlation. So I like how you're saying that, a correlation of the way that you use debt, or the plays that you make is a correlation to either your current status or where you're at, but also your skill level.
Yeah, that's a really good way to put it. I like that a lot. I like the pickleball analogy for sure.
We all get bit with the bug, huh?
Yeah, everybody.
Um,
I like pickleball. Everybody loves pickleball.
yeah, most people, right? And so, well, look, I love it. Any other thoughts on this debt or no debt thought? And I know that, if there's any thoughts you have as a lender as well, whether it's cautionary tale or it's just general thoughts on it, because I know you lend as well.
I would say that the flip of the debt is the equity on the same house, right? So as you're thinking about the debt on the house, I think it's also important to think about the equity on the house. And Burr is I'm not disparaging Burr. It is the biggest reason that I was able to accumulate wealth. It's a great wealth builder, but it's not a great wealth grower. And that, like, if you get $30,000 of equity and you're earning $6,000 a year, that's 20% return on day one. That's amazing. Infinite people, it's infinite return. But now the return on equity decreases every day. And so you
Yeah,
go into, I have $100,000 of equity in that same home. I'm only growing now at 6% instead of 20%. And
yeah,
that's when I start to think about how do I redeploy that money. And so I think that part of the debt thought is also part of the equity thought as well. And they kind of go hand in hand.
I like that. And I think it's important, right? What metrics matter to you, right? Because some people, I had a guy who I talked with the other day, had hundreds of properties. Later in life, had a ton, and he might actually been. You said you were just at a mastermind recently. He might even have been there, in that group. But his biggest problem is redeploying money, and so he knows he gets a smaller yield at home, but it's safer for him. And so for him, he's like, how do you calculate safety on a with a yield? Right? Like you can't,
Yeah.
right? That's not a button on a calculator. So I definitely think that's interesting, man. I appreciate you sharing your thoughts. Any last thoughts before we wrap up here?
Well, I love that. That last throw in was great. Like, not only your wealth curve matters, but your life curve, and where you are on the life curve determines what you're going to get on your yield.
Yeah,
And at a certain point, that security becomes invaluable. So that
yeah,
person gave some great advice.
yeah. I mean, at a certain point, do you start taking chips off the table? You have
Yes.
so much. At a certain point, do and I think that's important, right? The When we're younger, we can be more aggressive. We can be, we can grind and hustle a little bit more. But at a certain age, you want to start saying, "Hey, look, I don't want to necessarily have to chase certain levels." So I
Yeah.
get that.
Conservation of capital becomes
Yeah,
vital at a
I
certain age.
love that, man. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me today and sharing your thoughts on the debt or no debt question. And I'm looking forward to having some more conversations as well.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. I really appreciate it. Had a great time.
Thanks, man.